Welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. This is a special edition, very, very different from what I normally do. I tackle music for the most part, and classic rock music. Don't normally stray into movies or anything like that, but that's kind of what this one's about. If you're not a Star Trek fan, might want to avoid this one. Feel free to watch. But if you're a fan of like music formats and variations in record labels and things like that, you might find this one interesting. It's one of the things that hooked me into the collection I'm about to show you. As far as science fiction franchises go, I'll raise my hand and say that I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than I am of Star Trek, but I do like Star Trek. I guess you could call me a junior Trekkie. And being on Discogs has shown me a lot of different things about releases, musical releases that I didn't know about. And the Star Trek movie soundtracks, starting with 1979, I started looking through those because, of course, I remember those movies quite well. I'm talking about the first 6 Star Trek movies, all featuring the original crew. So from the motion picture in 79 to The Undiscovered Country in 1991. There are podcasts that do a much better job at this. I know Cinebrose Supreme tackles a lot of movies. Todd's Analog and More, big movie fan. I know Todd's a Star Trek fan, so hopefully you catch this one in your newsfeed. So I've got some cassettes to show you that are soundtracks to the Star Trek movies from, well, mostly spanning the 80s. And what I find interesting about them is that even though it's the same franchise and it's the same movie studio, I was intrigued because the label that released the soundtrack changed every time. And I'll get into that and show you what I mean. So this is a very, very special edition, definitely going where Tim's Vinyl Confessions has never gone before. So I had to throw in a line like that at least once. So I'll start off with the first Star Trek movie that was made in 1979, Star Trek the Motion Picture. When I was a kid, that's not where I started. I think I started with the second or third and went back and watched the first one. Of course, I would have told you I liked it years later. I'm like, wow, it's a slow-moving movie. More like an extended episode. But anyway, this is the soundtrack to Star Trek the Motion Picture. It's cool to have this artwork. I like the artwork a lot. And this is obviously, if you know anything about cassettes, this is a Canadian issue of the soundtrack. All the titles are there. And there's the side, music for the original soundtrack, Star Trek the Motion Picture. On Columbia, this is an old CBS cassette. Nothing inside the J card, and the cassette is well worn. It's a nice yellowish beige color. Probably doesn't play. Copyright 1979, Paramount Pictures Corporation. So it's on Columbia CBS. All right. I think the first one I saw is one of the best. 1982, The Wrath of Khan. Action picked up considerably. We're not talking about the movies so much. Feel free to talk about the movies in the comments, but I'm just strictly talking about the soundtracks. So whereas the first soundtrack came out on Columbia CBS, here we have a US cassette of the soundtrack of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and it's on Atlantic Records. Original motion picture soundtrack recording. I like the cover a lot. Cool shot of the Enterprise in motion. Takes me back to seeing this movie originally, actually. Of course, I never had any of these soundtracks as a kid. But yeah, here it is on a different label, even though it's the same franchise. And that's just the beginning of all these changes here. And since soundtrack music isn't my specialty, I don't know much about the composers. Basically, seeing the names in context just makes me think of the movies I know of. Again, 1982, Paramount Pictures Corporation, but a completely different label. J-Card's got a little bit of credits inside it, not much. It does say music by James Horner. And James Horner, the composer, when I hear that name, I think of his Star Trek music. So, another soundtrack, another record company. Third Star Trek movie, Search for Spock. I remember seeing this one in the theater, actually. It's the first one I saw in the theater, probably among the first 5 movies I ever saw. So this time around, Capitol Records got the soundtrack. See, this I find this very strange. 3 completely different labels so far, yet the same franchise, the same movie studio. Silhouette of Spock there, of course. And this is on Capitol Records. And this time around, once again, music is by James Horner. So here you go. This is obviously a US copy. This is what Capitol Records cassettes looks like, the XDR on them. There's your back cover. And Paramount Pictures Corporation gets the nod again. So there you go. That's what the cassette looks like to the Search for Spock soundtrack. Originally, on the CD reissues, it tends to be soundtrack-centric labels like Varese Sarabande or ones that specialize in classical music. These are just your standard popular music labels that were putting these out originally, and that's the movie credits there to Wrath of Khan. (1986), the fourth Star Trek movie, The Voyage Home. This is the one about the whales. And here we go with the soundtrack. MCA Records. This is a US copy of the Voyage Home soundtrack, and now this time it's on MCA Records. Strange that there's no, that they didn't sign, you know, we're going to put these out, and I guess it's a by-movie basis, and whoever makes the best offer. So there's your back cover. This was typical of MCA cassettes at the time. This one, the J card actually folds out a little bit more. And this time around, Leonard Roseman is the composer of the music. And just about all of these incorporates, of course, the main Star Trek title. There's your inner credits. There's more information to be gleaned from this than most of them. And of course, the main title, it always gives credit to the original composer of the main title. It's a guy named Alexander Courage. And this is what the cassette looks like. I didn't show that already. Next up is one of a handful of cassettes I have that came unopened. It's never been opened. So Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Kind of an obvious title. I guess James Bond called the movie License to Kill, so it was alright. Came out in 1989, and I'll show you this first. It's unopened. So you can see a little glare there off of the plastic. Now we go back, like the motion picture soundtrack, and it's on CBS. This time around, though, specifically, it's on Epic Soundtracks. And song titles, a line drawn through that barcode so it doesn't scan for some reason. So there, that's the fifth one. And one last one to show you from 1991. And it's not the last one to feature the original cast. Generations featured the original cast plus Next Generation cast. But this is the last one to focus on the original cast of crew of the Enterprise. So, this is music composed and conducted by Cliff Idleman. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. What label is this one on this time? Did they use the same label twice in a row? No, they did not. They went right back to MCA once again. They flip-flopped these last two movies. And this is a Canadian cassette of the Undiscovered Country soundtrack. This is typical of Canadian cassettes in the early 90s with the MCA logo there in the cassette casing itself. This is in really, really good shape. And look at the J card here. Some pictures from the movie. And the co-writer and director Nicholas Meyer has a write-up inside of this. This has the most in it, most information in it of any of these soundtracks. I just thought it was interesting how they just changed the soundtracks from album to album, even though it's always been Paramount Pictures, and just thought it was neat, for lack of a better term. So don't worry, next weekend we get back into the music. I just wanted to do this one for fun. I know we must have some Star Trek fans. I know we get at least a couple that are watching this right now. So yeah, so that was my look at the original 6 Star Trek movies and their ever-changing record labels for the soundtracks on cassette. So thanks for watching this special edition of Tim's Final Confession. Yeah, there we go. See you later.